Flowers for the dead. During the holidays, I usually put on a bit of weight. All that good food is hard to put down, and during summertime, I always tried to walk off the extra pounds. Not to mention that I had a beautiful wife at home to stay slim and trim for. So to start my day, I got up early and went for my walk. It's about 2 miles long from my house to a nearby cemetery. After turning around, I'd get about 4 miles in total. It was safe to say that it was always a surefire way to lose weight fast. Today it was going to be hot, so getting it out of the way early was the easiest way. The road was straight and narrow, and there wasn't a lot of traffic. It didn't take long for me to make it to the cemetery. It was a pretty huge graveyard. About 800 or 900 bodies wouldn't be a stretch. You'd think I could do my walking there, but to me that seems a little creepy. And today, I did notice something out of the way. Lying on the ground by the front gate was a bouquet of roses. They seemed to be in pretty good shape, like someone had recently dropped them. There was a garbage can nearby, but they were too new for the trash. If I left them on the ground, they might get ruined. So I picked them up and walked into the cemetery. I figured if I searched around, I might be able to see whose grave they were meant for. But there were so many rows, and I was already pretty winded, so maybe a different idea was in order. I walked a few lines and read the tombstones. The plan was to find a kid's grave and place them there, but as I made my way, a certain plot caught my eye. It was of a young woman in her mid-20s. She and I were close in age. On her tombstone, it read, "A precious life cut short." I didn't know this person, but regardless, she had my sympathies. Something told me it wasn't anything good that put her here so soon. So I placed the bouquet on her grave and paid my respects. Afterwards, I left and walked back home. You'd think this is where the story ends, but my troubles had only just begun. Back at home, my wife and I had a nice life going. We'd been married for 3 years and loved the house we settled on. Everything from the neighborhood to the nearby town was perfect. It was an awesome place to raise a family, which is what we had planned, but our peace would slowly descend into chaos as days passed. It started small. My wife and I would hear strange knocks and bangs around the house. We'd put it off as the house settling or rodents, but over time, stranger things started happening. We'd wake up to find photos of us shattered and strewn about the room. When she talked to our sister, she was quick to say our house could be haunted, but my wife and I didn't really believe in the paranormal and tried using reason to rule things out. Very quickly, it seemed like all reason was going out the window. Late at night, while in bed, we'd hear the sounds of crying coming from our living room. I'd investigate only to find nothing. Afterwards, the cries only grew louder. My wife would have sharp burning sensations going down her back. When we lifted her shirt, there were scratch marks in sets of 3. At this point, even I had to admit that something strange was going on. We didn't have any animals, so there was no logical explanation for how this happened. I tried searching for answers on the internet, but all I found were ghost stories and ball of light videos. My wife ended up calling her sister, who referred us to a local medium. I'm not gonna lie, as soon as we went to the place I felt like a fool, about to ask someone who talked to the dead about what's going on in my house. But I guess for my wife's safety, I could shrug and go along with it. The so-called medium was an older woman with gray hair. She had on lots of bracelets and a crystal necklace. She had on heavy makeup with a bunch of strange symbols tattooed on her arms. She looked at my wife and saw the worry on her face. She promised she'd do everything she can to help us figure this out. When she looked over at me, though, her jaw dropped. She claimed she found our problem right away. I had a spirit attached to me. She said it was of a young woman who died much too soon. She said the woman's face was contorted and deformed. The woman claimed to talk to her, asking her what she wanted with us. Apparently, the spirit gave a simple reply. She wanted me. I got tired of listening to all this nonsense. I got up and shook my head. I told her I appreciated the help, but I just didn't buy all this. The woman assured me I had an attachment, and even if I didn't believe, she wanted to help. The supposed psychic said a prayer and told me to take heed. She said the spirit was dangerous and wanted me all to itself. I thanked her and told my wife we should go. That night, everything seemed peaceful enough. My wife and I watched a movie, ate dinner, and went to bed. It was while I slept, though, that I had a strange dream. I was lying in my bed looking up at the ceiling. I couldn't move, but I heard something rustling beneath the blankets. Whatever it was, slowly crawled up my paralyzed body until we met face to face. It was a woman with gray skin and long black hair. She wore a tattered white dress with her hair covering her face. She lowered herself to my ear and started to whisper. She told me that she loved the flowers and was glad to accept them. She explained that no one had ever shown her love until me. Was she referring to the roses I found at the cemetery? I tried to talk and explain that this was all a coincidence, but I couldn't. She continued by saying that we could be together forever, but first my wife had to go. That's when she showed me her face. The woman's features were horrifying. Her nose was crooked, her eyes bulged out of her head, and her teeth were long and protruded from her mouth. Her looks favored that of a wicked witch more than a human. It seemed that everything the medium said was true. I was absolutely terrified. She then leaned down and gave me a kiss on the cheek before speaking. "Don't worry, my love. When you wait, she'll be gone. Then our time will begin," she promised. After this, everything went black. I couldn't see or hear anything. I know this was just a dream, but I couldn't help but worry for my wife. I forced myself awake, and I'm glad I did, as what awaited me was something straight out of a horror movie. My wife was levitating in the air with her own blonde hair wrapped around her neck. I rushed into action, attempting to pull her down, but she wouldn't budge. I tried yanking the hair from around her neck, but it was pulled too tight. I was desperate and scared. Meanwhile, my wife was turning blue. I knew I didn't have time to call for help, but how could I save her? My thoughts were racing and the adrenaline filled my body. It was then that I thought back to my dream. I was the one she wanted. She mistook the random act of kindness as a confession. Realizing this, I knew what to do next. I planted my feet firmly on the ground and yelled. "Let go of my wife right now," I shouted. "I don't love you. I'll never love you." All of a sudden, I heard a screech so loud the house began to shake. Our floral pattern wallpaper peeled and drawers opened and slammed on their own. It was obvious that I angered her, but my wife was still in danger. With tears in my eyes, I cried out even louder than before. "Get out of my house right now! I command you to leave!" Suddenly, everything went quiet and my wife dropped to the floor. I rushed to her aid as she struggled to catch her breath. I knew it was over as I held her in my arms. Call it a hunch, but the atmosphere felt different, peaceful even. As time moved on, my wife and I grew even closer. We're expecting our first child any day now. There was no more activity and I stayed far away from the cemetery. Recently, I did some digging to learn more about the woman. Apparently, she was born during the 1800s and suffered from facial deformities. She never found love and led a pretty lonely life. It was obvious that I was one of the only people to ever show her kindness. It took some time, but I can honestly say I've forgiven her, and wherever she ended up, I hope her poor soul found peace. Follow for more.